Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now I do all things crafty, but on today's video I'm going to show you how I made these cute little Christmas ornaments with my xTool P2 CO2 laser. I saw these online and I thought I can make that, so I figured out how to make the design and I'm going to share that with you today. Now, even if you wanted to make these out of cardstock and your Cricut, your Silhouette, your Romeo, whatever cutter you have, you could use this same design for those too. Now, some of you might not be interested in how to make the design, so when I get into the video, I'll tell you where to skip to if you just want to see how the laser handled this. So thanks again for joining me. Let's get started. Now, I've been playing around with all kinds of things since I got the xTool P2 CO2 laser, and one of the things I've been playing with are these ornaments. I'm going to show you how to make one of these, but before I do, let me show you a couple of examples that I've worked with already. So here's one, and basically what you do is you list all the names of a family, or all the kids in a family, or all your grandkids, all your pets' names, whatever you want to do, you list them, and then you arrange them so that they look like a Christmas tree. So there's the first one I did. And then if you don't want to use family names or pet names or anything like that, you can come up with your own list of words and use those as well. Sometimes that's even easier because you can pick words of varying lengths, and that's easier to work with. Now let's go ahead and bring up a blank screen in Inkscape. You can design these in whatever design software you use. Illustrator, Silhouette, I just happen to like Inkscape. It's the first one I started using. It's free, so I've stayed with it. Whatever you use, these concepts are very much the same. I'm just going to use Inkscape to show you. Now this time I'm going to make one of these for a lady that I work with. They have 3 kids, and so we're going to use the parents' names as well as the kids' names. So I'm going right over here to the text tool, click on it, and then click right over here where I want to type the names. Now, you could do this 2 different ways. You could just start typing all the names. You could have them all together, but then you're going to have to convert them to a path, separate them. I'm going to show you a more simple way. So if you're not real familiar with how to do those things, you can still do this project. Now, one important thing is that you use all caps. And I'm going to use a really plain font because these can get kind of busy looking. The way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to type one name. Then I'm going to click right back here on the text tool, click back over here again, type the second name. Let's type it correctly. Click back onto the A, type the third name, so on and so forth. So I have 5 names, just one more to go. Let's see, who am I missing? Maggie. Okay, so after you've done that, click up here on the select tool. And then I want to drag the names so that the shortest one's at the top and the longest one is at the bottom. These 2 are about the same length, but I think I'm going to have, let's go ahead and have Ashley at the bottom. We'll move Hank up, Ashley at the bottom, and then we're going to put Maggie here. The reason I chose to have Maggie here is it looks like I could make this narrower a little bit more easily than this. First of all, I want to try to just move the letters together. I don't want to just drag it like this because when you do that, each letter becomes thinner. So the parts of the letters become thinner, and I want the thickness of these letters to match the thickness of the other letters. So let me go back. Now, I may not be making sense right now, but just wait. You're going to see what I'm talking about. Okay, so fortunately, I think the first 2 names are fine. They start going at a gentle slant. Then we get to Hank, and we just go straight. And then you come over here, you go straight. So we're going to have to figure out how to fix this. First of all, I'm going to go to Hank, and I can't just ungroup that now. So you go up to Object and Ungroup, and it doesn't work. So with it selected, I'm going to go up to Path, Object to Path, Object, Ungroup. And it's that easy. So now I'm going to start moving these letters apart. To select something in Inkscape, you can either just click on it and it selects what you click on, or if you want to select more than one thing, just drag all the way around both of the things. So I'm going to move this to the right one, click off of it, click my K, move it to the right one, click my H, move it to the left one. Okay, still not very good. Let's make Hank just a little bit wider. And then if we have to, we'll go up and we'll make Luke a little narrower. And I think we're going to have to. All right, so for now, well, let's make Hank a little bit wider yet. Hank's just going to have to be spread out a little bit. In the end, it'll look fine. All right, so let's go ahead and group Hank together. So go all the way around it, go Object, and Group. All right, so let's make Luke a little narrower. Again, I don't want to just drag it because then the letters get thinner, or each piece of the letter becomes thinner. So the up and down of the L is thinner than the up and down of the H. That's why I'm breaking them apart and moving them independently. With it selected, I go up to Path, Object to Path, Object, Ungroup. Now I'm going to move Luke's letters together. And really, this is all just a matter of taste, how you like them to look. Okay, that's about as close as I want to go. So now let's select them all, go back to Object and Group. Okay, let's move Ben just a little bit closer together. Path, Object to Path, Object Ungroup. And we'll make his just a little bit narrower. That's going to do two things. It's going to make it so that it's significantly narrower than Luke, and then it's going to give me more surface space at the top to add a star, and I'll show you that later. So we're going to group those back together. Okay, before we go much further, let's go ahead and select everything, go up to Object, come down to Align and Distribute, and then let's go ahead and center those on the vertical axis. Okay, we're getting there. I think when we narrow Maggie up, it's going to look much better, and then we'll make Ashley a little bit wider. With Maggie selected, we're going to Path, Object to Path, Object, Ungroup, and now let's go ahead and move hers together. Now, even though I said I don't like taking the letters and just sliding them to make them narrower, I might do that with those two G's because they are really big. But first, let's start by doing it the other way. You know, I think that might be just fine. Let's go ahead and group that together. And then let's move Ashley apart just a little bit. So this should be our last time to go to Path, Object to Path, Object, Ungroup, and move those apart. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the G's just a little bit smaller. So we're going to go up to Object and Ungroup because we already converted it to a path and ungrouped it once. So now all we have to do is hit Ungroup. So I select a G, hold the Shift key down, select the other G, and then I can just slide this to the left. I don't like doing it that way, but sometimes you just have to. Okay, so let's put Maggie all back together, Object, Group, and then I think this should look pretty good, and we can move on to the next step. So let's center them. We are going to call that good. Okay, so the next step is to put a little rectangle under each word to connect it to the word below it. I'm going to click right here on this rectangle tool, click on it, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a little rectangle. First of all, let's see how large these words are. And it's just over 1 inch tall. That's a pretty good size to start with. You could start at any size you want because you can always shrink it down as long as the proportions are right. But I like to have it close to the size I'm going to end up with. I think that just gives you a better idea of what it truly looks like. Okay, so let's go back to my rectangle. And I like my rectangle to be about 0.15 inches. Now notice my padlock is unlocked, so when I change the height, the width doesn't change. Now I can either just eyeball this width, and that looks pretty good, but one thing I like to do is I like to see how wide that is. So I'm going with thin, and it's 2.515 inches wide. I'm going to start by having this 2.515 inches wide. Now this is all just your own judgment call, or how you like the design to look. You might want to have each line extend a little bit past the word. This is just how I start. All right, so we're going to select bin and the rectangle, and then we're going to go ahead and center those on the vertical axis. Now I want to make sure that this line is touching bin. So I'm going to select it, and on my keyboard I'm just using the up arrow to move it straight up. Now at this point I would zoom in really closely, because sometimes it can look like they're touching, but they're not really touching. So let's go up one more, and I think that looks good. Now, do I want to extend it beyond? If so, I can drag it from the side and move it just slightly beyond the end of his name. Okay, I like that. So let's go ahead and circle both of those, go back to Object and Group. Now here's what I should have done before grouping those together. Let me show you on this next one. So I'm going to make another rectangle, and let's use the select tool so that I can select it, and then let's change the height to 0.15. Now, before I do anything else, before I get it to the right size and group it, let's go ahead and do Command C for copy, Command V for paste, and I'm going to do that 3 times. So I hit Command V 3 times. You can't tell there's all that many lines there because they're just stacked up on each other. I'm just going to kind of move those down somewhat into place. Okay. So let's see how wide Luke is, 3.223. So I'm going to start with that same width. Then I'm going to select Luke and the line, and then center those on the vertical axis. Now let's go ahead and start moving that up with the up arrows, and I want it to just barely kind of overlap. That looks good. Now I'm just going to barely drag it on each end so that I have a tiny bit left over on the sides. Again, you don't have to do that. It's really just your preference on how you want it to look. So I've selected both items, go to Object and Group. Now I'm going to go through this same exact process 3 more times. So I'll just fast forward through it, and then we'll pick back up. All right, I'm going to pick up right here because look how close that is. The S is actually touching, but the rest aren't, so I need to go up one more. And then let me zoom back out so you can see it. And then I'm not sure that I like that much overhang over here. So here's what I'm going to do. So that I get a little bit of overhang on the left, I'm going to select this, move it to the left with my arrow keys. And then I'm going to click back on it, and I'm going to get rid of just a little bit of that overhang. Just a little bit of it. That's just personal preference. You can do it either way. Then we'll group those back together. Okay, so the next step, let's go ahead and get them centered up again. So I selected all of them, click on center on the vertical axis. Now we have to move each of them together. So you're just going to use the same concept. Let's click on Ben, and let's just use the down arrow to move him down. Okay, so I zoomed in so I could see if they were touching. They're not quite, so we're going to go down one more time, and I think that looks good. Let's select Hank. Let's move him up. Okay, not quite there, so I'll go one more. We'll call that good. We're going to move Maggie up. The rounded letters touch first usually. You can see that here. The G's are touching. Nothing else is. So we'll go up one more time, and that's good. Now we're going to move Ashley up. And we're almost ready to put the star on top. Not quite there. You can see a little bitty white gap. Now we are. Okay, before I do anything else, let's make sure they still are centered. I don't think I moved anything to the left or the right. Okay, they're still centered. I'm going to go up to Object and Group. Now at this time, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and make this what's called a path so that I can make it a little more bulky. You have to convert it to a path to get it more bulky. So with everything selected, I'm going to go to Path, Object to Path, go to Object, Ungroup, and I'm probably not going to be able to weld them together yet because I have to ungroup it further. Remember, we've grouped so many things, but let's try it. Path, Union. Okay, so I can't yet because they're not all ungrouped all the way. So we're going to keep going to Object, Ungroup. I'm waiting till I see each of the individual letters as its own object. Click on Object, Ungroup. Okay, now you can see each letter, so I think it's ungrouped as far as you can go. So now I'm going to go back to Path and Union. Okay, now what I can do is I can either hit the Command and the right parentheses and it makes it bulkier, or let's go back. I want to show you how you do it using these up here. We're going to go to Path and then Outset. And when I hit Outset, watch those letters. There you go. That's exactly what I'm looking for, just to give it a little bit more bulk, make it less fragile. So now what I want to do is I want to add a star on top. So I'm going to click right here on the Create Stars and Polygons. And then I'm just going to draw a star. Notice it has 5 points on it. They're called corners, and if yours isn't doing 5, you can set that right here. Now let's go to the Select tool because you need to do that to move it. And then let's move it down. First of all, let's get it in the center. Now, you can't always have it in the exact center. Sometimes it just doesn't come down and touch in the right place. But let's see if mine will. Okay, that's going to be a stretch. I think that if I move it to the left just a little bit, it's going to do better. Okay, that is better. That's barely touching. So I'm going to show you one more tool that you can use to manipulate this. And sometimes when people see editing points, they get a little nervous. Just play with them. They're really not as difficult as it seems they are once you start playing with them and understanding them. So I'm going to click on the star, go up here to Path, and then Object to Path. Now if I click right over here on this Nodes tool, you can see all the little nodes in this. Let me blow this up so we can see it just a little bit better. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take this one and I want to drag it so that I get more of that star connected to the B. And that's it. So I'm going to hit the Select tool, and with this selected, hold the Shift key down, add it to the rest of it, go up to Path and Union. If you don't do that, it's going to cut the point and it's going to cut the B, and you're just going to slice them apart. So now we're going to add a circle on the top. Here's your circle. So I'm just going to drag a circle, and look, it's more of an oval. So let's select it by going right here. Now I can see that it really isn't a circle. So let's change the width to the same as the height. Okay, now it really is a circle. We can set it over here. And when this arrow looks like it's in the middle, you're good. And I would just say select everything and center it, but sometimes you finagle these, and what is technically the center of your design isn't the center of the star. And so I like to put this circle on just by hand or just by sight. That looks pretty close to the middle. I think I'm good. Now I do want to make that a tiny bit larger though, so I'm going to lock it and I'm going to bump it up to 0.35. And we're going to move it over just a tiny bit. Okay. Now I need a hole in the middle, So I'm going to either grab another circle, or I can just select this one, hit Command C for copy, Command V for paste, and then I'm going to change it a different color so I can see it. I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to go somewhere around 0.15. I'm going to put it in the middle. I can either do it just by sight, or I can select both of those and say center on the vertical axis, then center it on the horizontal axis. Now with both of them selected, I go up to Path and Difference. Uh-oh, look at that. I have the circle too far down on it, so we're going to go back. I don't want that point showing. I can fix that one in two ways. I can either move both of these up, or let's go ahead and move them back down. I can go ahead and I can weld or unite this red circle with the rest of it first. Then when I slice out of it, it's going to slice out of the whole thing. Let's do it that way. So I select the bottom part, hold the Shift key down, add my red circle to it. Now I go to Path and Union. Now if I add that inside circle to it, go back up to Path and Difference, there we go, all fixed. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to add 2023 at the bottom, 2023. You don't have to add 2023. If you don't want this to be dated, just take a rectangle and make a little stump, make sure it's in the center, and cut it out like that after you unite it to the rest of this. But in this case, I want to go ahead and put the year on it. So let's get rid of that. I'm going to go back to text, and I'm going to type 2023. And I'm just going to say with the same font. Maybe it would be cute if you changed up the font for that, but I want it to look real uniform. Now that's pretty narrow. We're going to have to make that a little bit more bulky. And I think I'm going to just make it narrower this way, just dragging it together. It doesn't have to be exactly like the name, so I'm comfortable doing it that way. So I'm going to go up to Path and Outset, and it bulked up. Now, if for some reason, when you type your thing out, it won't do that, with it selected, go to Path, Object, Ungroup, Path, Union, and then it will. Sometimes it's hard to tell why it is and why it isn't, but if it isn't, go ahead and change that to a path, ungroup it, unite it back together, weld it back together, and then you can make it larger, or you can use that outset feature. All right, I'm going to do it one more time, make it a little bit more bulky, and I think that looks good. So let's get that in the center. I'll select everything, center it up, and even though this says it's technically in the center, I feel like it needs to go to the right just a little bit. Now let's zoom in on that because I don't want it to overlap too much and you lose some of the detail of your letters, but you want it to attach enough that it's going to be nice and secure. You don't want it to be super fragile. So I'm going to go up one, and I think that'll be good. We're going to select everything, go up to Path and Union. You wouldn't have to group all those together like I did and then go back through ungroup, ungroup, ungroup. You could just leave them all individual, but I tend to like to use the grouping feature, and then when I want to convert it to a path, I just backtrack. Okay, I don't really like that 2023. I'm going to go back, and I don't really like it. I want to make it just a little bit narrower. I feel like it takes away from the tree. Okay, that looks better. Let's go ahead and center that up again. And again, for some reason, maybe it's just me, I feel like it really needs to go to the right a tiny bit. So I moved it over 2 times. I'm going to go around everything, go up to Path, Union, and we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and save this to my desktop. Then I'm going to open the xTool Creative Space software. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open xTool Creative Space. I have my computer plugged in to my xTool and I have the power on. I've also put the piece of wood in there already, and you can see I've been playing around with these. Now this piece of wood is slightly warped, but it's not as bad as what this camera makes it look like. Let me go ahead and drag this so you can see the whole thing. And you can see it already recognized that my P2 is connected. If it doesn't, just hit refresh here. All right, move that so you can see it all. Let's go ahead and let's bring in our image. So I'm going to go right up here to image, click on it, and then on my desktop, I'm going to go down to Ornaments or Ornament Ashley. I click on it and say open. Okay, you can see it's right here. It does say, well, it had a warning, something about fonts and can't be parsed, but it works out fine. Because we did weld all that together, it's going to be fine. Now, it looks like it's a tiny bit too large to fit on the piece of wood that I have left. And I should have checked the height and everything before I brought it in here because I don't like these to be that tall. With this padlock locked, I'm going to go right here and I'm going to say 7 inches. Okay, so that made it 7 inches tall, 4.57 wide, and I can live with that. Again, I really should have adjusted the size in Inkscape, and I probably should have done that before I bulked it all up. Because sometimes when you make things bulky, they're large, then you shrink them down, they don't look so good. This one I didn't make that big of a change to, I think it'll be fine. Now the next step after bringing it in and getting it on my piece of wood is I want to go right here to capture close view, click on it, and then I'm just going to bring my camera right here. Let's bring it down here because this is closest to the edge of the wood. I want to make sure it really is capturing this correctly. So when you capture the close view, with the second camera, it takes a close-up picture. Notice how the bottom of the wood looks so much different, so much clearer than it did in the larger view. The larger view is done with a different camera. So that's one nice thing about this tool is there's 2 cameras, and when you use this one that's really, really close to the laser head, you get a really better representation of what you're looking at. Okay, so I know it's placed okay. It's not placed too tightly on there or anything. So now I'm going to click off of it and select my material. Now I have the slats that came with it in, so I'm going to leave that alone. Here's your other options. I'm going to go right down here to user defined material, and I'm using this 3mm cherry plywood setting. That's what I used when I cut it before. It worked really well, so I'll select that. Then I'm going to click back onto my design, and I'm going to let the P2 know I want it to cut it. Notice when I click on cut, the power will change. Scoring takes a lot less power. Engraving takes a lot less power. Cutting, it's going to cut it at 100% power. And it's going to go a speed of 20. I'm fine with that. Now I do want to tell you, you can use a paper masking material, and that's going to make it where you don't have nearly as much charring on the front. But with the P tool, it has an air assist tool, and so you really don't get too much. I want to show you exactly what it looks like if you don't mask it. And what little bit of charring is on there. If I don't like it, I'll use a soft sandpaper sponge and I'll just sand it off. I'm ready to go ahead and process this, so I click on process. It gives me a little preview, and then I click start. Now it's not actually going to start until I go over and I press this button. What I'm going to do before I do that is open my window, drape my exhaust hose out, then we'll go over to the P2 and get started. Now you probably saw that really didn't cut well because I didn't have it supported well. So we're going to say okay. See, the slats are close together here, but my cut was over here where there wasn't nearly enough support. I'm going to put another piece of wood in and we're going to start over. Okay, so I have this on the new piece of wood, and I'm going to make sure this time that it is centered on those close slats. Let's go ahead and do capture close view. See how they're closer together there? I took some slats from over here and put them together. We're going to go ahead and move this over just a little bit. Hopefully that will work. I think it will, but let's see. I haven't changed any of the settings, so I'm going to hit Process, Start, and let's go do Take 2. That one looks so good. It only took 3 minutes and 16 seconds, so let's go ahead and get it out. I'm going to take it back over to my work table and show it to you up close and personal. Now here's the first two that I cut out of the P2. This one is actually just that corrugated paper that comes with the P2, and that did an excellent job. There's actually no charring on that. Probably because the speed is pretty fast since it's just corrugated paper. Here's one that I cut out of the same type of wood that I used today, and I actually sanded this. I didn't use masking paper on it. I went ahead and let it char a little bit, and then I sanded it. If you want to use masking paper, here's the masking paper that I use. It does a really nice job, and it does allow you to not have to sand as much. So here's the one that I just took out of the P2. You can see the difference in having charring on it and not having charring on it. Again, no masking paper was used, so this is what it looks like coming straight out of the P2. That air assist does a really nice job. So you can see the difference. This one's a little darker, a little bit rustic. Some people like that. I like them real clean looking like that. So what I do is I take one of these sponge type sanders and I just lightly sand on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so you can see my process. It really doesn't take too much, and to me it's worth it. Okay, you can already see a difference. Now, because I prefer it not to have all that charring on it, I do usually use masking paper, but I'm trying to get to know this laser before I do that. I really want to see what I can do without it and what's going to require it. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. It's already taken most of that charring off. If I wanted to, I could pinpoint, like there's a little bit left there. I could just pinpoint those areas, but I'm pretty happy with it the way it is right now. So here it is on wood. I did sand this one a little bit more than this one, but I wanted you to see really how much it takes to get to this level. And I sanded about twice as much to get to that. And then again, here's the one with the corrugated paper. Now, you could also just use cardstock. If you want to do this on your Cricut, your Silhouette, you could cut these out of cardstock. That would be super cute too. Now, xTool is having their big holiday sale right now when I put this video out. I'll have a link to that information in the video description below. Also, if you use my link, I do receive a referral fee. Those do really help the channel out, and I appreciate it so much. They don't tell me who you are, so I can't give you a proper thank you, but I want you to know I really do appreciate it. All right, let's take one more look at these. I think those are adorable. Whether you want to personalize it with the year or just have it generic, or if you don't want to personalize it at all, you can make something like this. So thanks so much for joining me today, and until my next video, bye-bye.